So I'm really excited to have here tonight Tash from Inspired EC. Welcome to PD in a Pocket.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited.
Good. Listen, can you just give us a brief overview of, how you got involved in family daycare and what your role is now?
Okay, so family daycare, I've been a trainer and consultant for about 14 years now in early childhood, and we were speaking at a New South Wales family daycare conference around nature play and the benefits of getting outside your gate and being in natural environments with children. Some of the educators from that area came up to us afterwards and said, oh, our scheme won't let us, like they're a bit scared or worried about the regulations and things, and we talked to them about how it's actually allowed and supported with our framework, and people saying, oh, please start a scheme. So we did. The idea was to actually start it to be something like a bit of a model scheme that would help other schemes understand and see that it could happen, and that what it looked like in action, and to not be so scared of it. I understand if you're not as comfortable as we are with that sort of stuff, it could have been scary, but basically it was just to show people that it can happen, and also to really advocate and raise the perception of family daycare, especially in the early childhood settings. Like, family daycare is one of my favorite things. My sons went through family daycare. It's a beautiful option for early education and care. So that's
we think so too.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like, I love family daycare. And also, so I'm the approved provider, or one of the approved providers. Nicole Holton is the other one. Also, but I've been in every role except for the educator, I guess. So when we started, I was the person that went out and did all the registration visits. I was the first coordinator for our scheme. I helped bring on other people within our team gradually. So I've done all the visits, helped develop all the policies, I've helped develop all the processes. And I mean, the team have gone above and beyond that now since I've sort of stepped back a bit from it, but I'm still really involved even from an approved provider perspective.
Okay, that's great. So let's look at the topic that we're talking about today, which is child-centered programming and planning. Why do you think that's important?
Because it's about them and it's not adult driven. I feel like, children have got such a small window of time. They need to be around people that really are providing opportunities for them that are child-led and come from that child's intrinsic motivation. Like, it's so important that because each child's so different and they're at all different ages and stages. And if we're not following on and taking our lead from that, then we're sort of not providing the best opportunities we can for children. And if programs come from an adult agenda too much, I mean, there's nothing wrong with provocations and say maybe in intentions, but I'm really passionate about yes spaces. So every time something is adult led and goes against the child's perspective or the way the child's leading their program, then we can tend to sort of push against those intrinsic motivations or those fascinations that they have, which isn't great for a child's sense of well-being, to be honest. And when we know well-being and involvement from Farrell Avis's work is, they're the two best indicators of high quality early education and care. So if children have got a high sense of well-being, deep levels of involvement, we know we've got it right.
So just for those that might not understand what the difference is, what would you see as adult-led programming and planning?
So adult-led's probably, there's all variances. I think there's like a spectrum of it. So there can be as extreme as on week 2 of term 3 on the Wednesday, we're going to do the color blue. Like it can be that extreme. And I've seen settings where it is like that, not family daycare as such, but across I've consulted across all different areas in early childhood, but that's the most extreme. But even down to just something recently, it was in an infant's room, and one of the children had noticed a truck out the window, and straight away that on the program, the educator sort of felt that they needed to then do an interest area on trucks. And even that in itself is a form of adult-led, because they're not, a baby isn't going to be thinking about what they're going to do with, like the stage of play of a baby, it didn't match up, if you know what I mean. So it can be it can be intended and it can be accidental as well. I think it very varies on the understanding of play development of the educator, as well as, you know, or the understanding of where child-led is from as well. But it's that really structured stuff that adults can give. But I think a lot of it is to, as long as it's an offering, not a you must do this or it's the only option, that can be a factor in that as well. Like I said before, it's great to offer a provocation, but it's still, if that's the only option, or if that's the whole group time and everyone's got to come, then that's still not really child-led.
So you're much more in favour of, you know, a much more child-centred approach.
Oh, definitely.
You wouldn't be using themes, or would you be using themes?
It depends on the age of the child and what the theme is, you know. So for me, the theme I would use, if I was going to use a theme for infants, would be discovery play. So it would be highly sensorial treasure baskets, but that lends itself to the stage of play of that age group. But for a preschool age group, you know, if I identified the children had shown a really strong interest in something and you sort of presented a provocation or an interest table or something that's based around the observations that you've seen or the conversations you've had with children or just your knowledge of that child, then you might set that up. But I think it also has to be balanced out in your space, so it's not the only option that's there as well. So it's definitely how you set up the information, the invitation to play, or even how you present it. So sometimes, like for group times, are a little bit contentious with me. I even for a group time, I feel that they should all be offerings to children, not everyone must come and do them, because it's. But I'm not sure how far down that path you want to go. But yeah.
I think you'd find that in a lot of family daycare services, educators would be expecting the 4 children they care for to be doing the same thing at the same time. Are you saying that isn't necessary?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's really tricky to do a group time that meets multiple children's intrinsic motivations. So especially when you're in family daycare, generally your children are multi-aged too, so they're at different stages of play. They might want to be involved at different levels too, so that some of them might be interested in it for like 5 to 10 minutes, some might be for like 10 seconds. And sometimes it can be challenging to manage all that at the same time, and we tend to sometimes, not all the time, be trying to manage the children that aren't as engaged with the children that are. So you're telling, you know, Johnny down here, I can sit still and listen to the book, whereas, you know, Alice over here is really into the book and getting really annoyed with all the interruptions as well. So whereas Johnny's got something else in the room that he actually likes to play with and can, you know, naturally leave the group and just play there and still be engaged, and with obviously within supervision, everyone's getting something out of it. Alice gets to listen to the story and be engaged, but Johnny still gets to be involved in something that's intrinsically motivating to him. So,
okay, so let's imagine you go into one of your best educators' homes, right? I don't want you to name who they are or anything, but what would you expect to see happening in their home?
So I would expect, again, and this is really important with family daycare, you're not mini childcare centres and you don't need to be. So I would expect it to feel home-like. I would expect to see that family reflected in the space as well. I would expect to see a lot of loose parts and open-ended play spaces that children can make their own, and to create, to be able to use in a way that's meaningful for them when that intrinsic motivation or fascination comes to them. I'd want natural elements, or for me, indoor, outdoor, or natural access is really important, you know, natural outdoor spaces. But I'd want it to be reflective of what the children are exploring. I'd want it to be messy, because we know that's what it's going to be like. One person with 4 children trying to keep everything spotless, that's not going to happen. I still remember a story of actually going into one of our educators right at the beginning, an educator's space, and it was spotless. And I was like, it actually freaked me out a little, because I was like, this is not, what does she look like? Where's the play? You know, where's the play? Unless they're all.
And she cleaned it all up because you were coming.
Yeah, actually, she ended up not actually staying with us for that long, because we weren't balancing on our philosophical perspective. So you've got to be able to see play. Play needs to be evident. you know.
Sure.
If you're in a space and children are there, like if it's not the beginning of the day, before they've even arrived, you'd expect it to be messy. So
how does play fit into child-based planning and programming?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. Child-based programming is play, because that's how children explore the world. So it should be watching their play, understanding their play, and then offering opportunities to facilitate that play. I think as adults, and especially in early childhood, in particular, especially maybe 15, 20 years ago, we were really encouraged to engage in children's play. What are their voices, ask them questions, all that sort of thing. And as the research and the development stuff that I've researched, and even in my own practice, the less we're actually involved in play, or the more we actually wait for the cue from the children's play to be involved, the better facilitators of play we are. So to be able to sit back and, it's a really fine-tuned skill as an educator to be able to gauge a child's play cycle and know when to come in and when to not. Because then when you see that really deep level learning happening, and that doesn't happen when you're getting quizzed 7 million times, the child's not going to stay in that trough of deep level learning if they're being asked what color is that and how many trains have you got every 5 minutes. So if the adult can really watch the play and be responsive to the play and sensitive to the play, they'll be able to use that then to guide the program, to know what resources to provide, what time and space to provide. Time and space are what two of our really important resources that we can give or provide for children.
Oh, tell me more about them.
Oh yes, so spaces in particular, like I love provocate, depending on the age of the child, but some interest areas and provocations for play. But you've also got to have that wild loose parts area too. That can be anything. If a child goes into space, I always talk about the story. I don't know if you ever watched Banana Man. It was on ABC. Anyway, Eric was this boy who used to eat a banana and turn into Banana Man. He always wanted a banana rocket. And I always think, if I walked into one of these settings and I turned around and went, okay, that's cooking over there, and I've got a drawer there, and I can only build blocks there, and the blocks have got all the cars and stuff there, so it's transport. Where can I make my banana rocket today? So we call them deconstructed play spaces. So it's great to have something like that, which is usually full of loose parts, which can be anything. There's no provocation as such, it's just materials. But also from a time perspective, it's having large blocks of uninterrupted time.
So what in a great loose parts kind of setup, what would you expect to see? Do we need millions of little bits of things, or are we looking at big loose parts, or are we looking at...
Well, a variety depends on your space, doesn't it? So it's what your capacity can hold. Also, you don't want to go over the top with loose parts to start with. You want some smaller manipulative pieces. You want fabrics. You want connectors like string or rope, and you want a variety of things, and then you can observe that play and build on it. But then outdoors, obviously, you want larger bits and pieces as well as smaller bits and pieces that you can utilize together. Also, allowing children to move parts from one context to the other is really empowering as well. So
take the inside toys outside?
No, it's shock horror. and that's again where I encourage services and educators to not spend too much money on the resources that you have, unless it's really specific and really intentional for something in particular. Like, because if you get that precious about the materials and resources that you're giving children, especially the younger ones, like your infants and toddlers, they're gonna, what they're gonna do, and they're in those first two stages of play of what is this object and what can I do with it, which means we're throwing it, we're banging it, we're hiding it, we're transporting it, we're chewing it, we're doing all that sort of stuff. So think about the resources you're providing and don't make them so precious that children can't use them in a way that's meaningful for them.
Okay. As we know, educators have to document their program and share it with parents. Mm-hmm. How can this be done for a child-centered program?
Yeah.
How can it be done easily?
Okay, so I don't know if you're aware, I don't know if we discussed this, Lisa, but I'm actually a trainer for Claire Warden for Talking Thinking Floor Books, and they're my favourite documentation process because they are simple, they're meaningful, there's not a box to fill. So you can do half a page one day, you might do 4 pages the next day. It's all child-centered. It's all about what's happening in the space. And it's a really good, not too confrontational form of documentation, especially for families. So it's a good way then to advocate for the learning that's happening through that play-based learning in a way that's, like I said, sometimes documentation can be overwhelming for families if it gets really, I think there's documentation for
sometimes, I'd say always.
Yeah, so documentation needs to be authentic, it needs to be meaningful and quality rather than quantity.
Okay, but let's break down the words documentation and programming, because I know some educators think of those two things as two separate things. So let's just looking at preparing your program for the week or whatever. How do you do that if you're going to be child-centered?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the age group of the children that you're working with, but really it should be just looking at what the children are doing and turning that into your planning. You see what the children are interested in, think about where it's coming from and how it could be, where it could go. The article that I sent to you the other, was it this morning or yesterday, about teacher Tommy, he sees his role as being ready for play. So it's like, how can I be ready for where this could go? And I love that idea, because it's all still, as a teacher, I'm thinking, I'm planning, I'm reflecting, where can it be? I'm planning for that, and then I'm ready if it eventuates or how.
But I'm still going to have to write it down or type it into a program, aren't I?
Oh, you can, but remembering a planning cycle and a program is just that. What do you see? Think about that and have some thoughts around that, plan for it, and then how does it eventuate and play out in your space?
That's a very nice explanation of the planning cycle. Okay, I suspect that some of our family daycare educators are used to a much more rigid form of programming, and that you might be scaring them a bit with this kind of like, but let's leave it there for now. So in my mind, one of the best things about family daycare is that educators know their children. They have absolute intimate knowledge of their children. How can they use that in child-centered programming?
Well, the thing is, you cannot really effectively plan for a child or program for a child until you really get to know them. So that's why family daycare is the best environment for that. I'll probably get in trouble if anyone else watches this, but when I do,
don't worry, the rest of the sector isn't that interested.
I know. So even when I work with services, when a child first comes with you, don't feel the pressure to be documenting and planning straight up. Your program and your documentation should be around your relationship and building that your program is relationships initially, because otherwise you're just chasing your tail. The more in-depth your relationship is and the more you know the child in your space, the more effectively you're going to be able to guess what their intrinsic motivations are, because that's all our observation and planning processes is just us guessing what's going on in that child's head and what they might need, but it's all guesses. So the more if we focus on the relationship building and getting to know those children first, we're more likely to be able to guess what might be happening for that child and then be better placed to actually provide the right resources or the opportunities that they might need to continue that child-led program.
You've used the phrase intrinsic motivation a few times. Can you explain that for those, that, maybe we know a lot of our families here having a lot of our educators that watch this series have English as a second language. We come from all over the world, which is great.
That's amazing.
Sometimes we need to break down, early education care jargon for people, just because sometimes people won't kind of say, I'm not really sure what that means. So I get to be the one that says, what's intrinsic motivation?
That's great. And like another term, like Claire Warden uses the term fascination a lot, and it's the same thing. Like it's when the child, and it's really simple, the child's body is saying, I need to explore this, do this, or whatever right now. It could be from a sensory integration perspective. It could be just their body's physical development in whatever level, saying, do this now. Like, or it could be the brain going, I need to know more about this right now. So a lot of the age group we work with, a lot of the play and the things that they're doing isn't really conscious in a sense. Like, if you know much about schema play is child's urges. Like, it's their brain is saying, I need to know more about this concept right now. And it could be, for example, trajectory. So a child's brain's going, you need to know how things move through the air, and you're going to do it with everything and everyone around you. So their brain is going, you do this, not the child going, oh, I might go over, pick up that block and throw it across the room so it hits Johnny in the head. So those things, they're urges, they're these fascinations that the child is just, intrinsic motivations that the child is just drawn to do. And their body's saying, you need to do this, explore this, feel this, or their brain's going, you need to build this knowledge, or you need to explore this concept. So it's these urges from either the brain or the body that are urging that child to be involved in that.
I remember when my daughter was really little, whenever she was on the verge of learning a new skill, like pulling up or walking or sitting, etc., she didn't sleep for 24 hours beforehand because all she wanted to do was that thing. And then she'd master it and she'd go, oh, great, now I'll go to sleep.
And it makes for such a nicer environment, because if you're following the child's lead, and the child's lead from these urges or fascinations or intrinsic motivations, whatever you want to call it, if you're following that, you're again creating yes spaces, which obviously then leads to less behavior support problems. And if you're following the child's lead, there's going to be less pushback.
Yeah, except at 3 a.m. in the morning when they want to practice sitting. Yeah, I'm not into that one. Okay, talking about babies, how do we plan for babies in a child-centered way? Because I get this with, I'm really clear about what you're talking about with toddlers, etc. But babies, it's kind of, like, surely we've got to give them paths to learn all the stuff that they need to learn.
It's funny.
I'm being provocative.
I know you are. It's funny. Babies are born with everything they need, like they're intrinsic, they're natural explorers of the world. I'll stop using intrinsic motivation. Know that with babies, care is the program. All those care moments are the program. Those anything that helps develop relationships and attachment and help build and help that child feel loved and accepted and appreciated. That is what is the program for babies. Programs are all, that child needs to feel love and safe, because we know if a child doesn't feel that way, their brain's not going to develop in the way it needs to, and they're not going to deeply involved in play if they're feeling stressed or they're overly upset. So it is all about care, environments that are highly not too sensorial, but sensorial in the right way.
What do you mean by sensorial?
Sensorial, so like engaging all the senses, which is, we've actually got 7 senses. We've got our 5 senses plus proprioception and vestibular. So if anyone wants to know more about that, Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom is the best book in the world and a really good read even for families. However, so sensory, sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, making sure that it is like that is sensorial for the baby to explore that way. But really, when it all comes down to it, if you had to focus on one thing in your program for babies, it's utilizing as many of the opportunities to really connect, show that child that they're loved, make that child feel safe, secure, and then the rest will flow, especially in a family daycare, because we've got multi-ages and you've got all these other people helping you with the baby as well. So the priority,
and often loving that baby as much as you do.
Yes. But the baby program is attachment and care and love and security. And we can use those daily care moments to do that as well, like nappy changes and meal times, really making the most of those opportunities when they are one-on-one.
But surely you've got a program for them in some way. You can't just say, when the assessment and rating officer comes over, authorised officer or whatever they're called these days, you can't just say, I love the babies.
Yeah, you can put up a diagram of Maslow's hierarchy and put that on there and say that is my program. Because Maslow's hierarchy shows that if we don't have those first 2 levels of that pyramid solid, they're never going to reach their full potential. And that's so you can use that. There's lots of other baby theorists that we can use as well, but Maslow's hierarchy is the most solid, obvious, clear one that just shows exactly what it's all about. It's underpinned by research, and that is our program.
Okay. I think we've almost come to the end of our time, but is there anything else that you want to say to educators about child-centered program? Any way you can encourage them to move towards trying it?
Give it a go. Make it simple. The best thing is utilize loose parts. Loose parts are one of the best ways to really support child-centered environments, because they're open-ended materials that all the children in your space can use in different ways. So your environment can be one of those ways that you can really support a child-led program. If you can set that up with good loose part spaces, it will make it easier for you, and you'll also be able to step back and watch multiple play happening in that space, and then gather information. And post-its are great. Post-its are one of the best things that we can have, because you can jot ideas down on there to follow up later on. But just pare it back and know that play, well-being and involvement are the best things that we could be focusing on, rather than all the other stuff.
And, I reckon they're kind of pretty much the things that Family Daycare does well anyway.
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay, thank you very much for coming to us today, Tash. That was really great.
Thank you, Lisa.